It's just that we chose Legend of the Five Rings specifically because it was a game that had a lot of avenues for social dynamics as opposed to your standard D&D. Because if you were to get like D&D, you have to build from the ground up in terms of what the politics are, what the factions are, how people talk, how people think, what their cultures are about. While some of the setting books do help pave the way for adding the foundation for that work, L5R is kind of like Game of Thrones in the sense that the politics is really central to how the game works. So even if you can be a bushi, meaning a fighter type guy, no, all I care about are swords and cutting things, but you can't get away from the politics. Because you might be a very, very good combatant, and are the greatest student in this school of whatever.
Ned Stark was a good combatant.
Yeah, point taken. Ned Stark was a good combatant, and look where that got him. So it's important to pay attention to your politics.
Oh, wait. We're good. Can you go so right? Let's.
Okay.
Yeah, that's better.
Right. So, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jay Anyong.
Hi, Jay.
Second time around in this rodeo, and today we'll talk about duty, love, and honor using Rokugan social dynamics and how to use them both in L5R and in other games. Before I go through this, let me give, I guess, my credentials with regards to L5R. Sorry, good. Do you have a clicker?
Yeah.
Great. So, with regards to my history, way too much running out of steam. That's my #1 qualification to talk about this game. Next. Sorry. Yeah, most of my slides will do the one line of landing. I've been GMing since '97 with the first edition. L5R was the first game I ran, took the reins on as a GM. For good or for ill, I've learned all my lessons of how to run and how not to run. I've done all the sins of GMing, railroading and all that other things. But yeah, L5R is where I cut my teeth. Next, no less than 177 blog entries talking about it on my blog. I'll give the URL for my blog at the end of this talk. But I really like this game. So moving on. Yes, I still swear allegiance to the Lion Clan. If anyone's familiar with the setting, L5R basically has different factions, each one aligned to a different, animal, totem animal type thing that they align their philosophy to in terms of Bushido. I'm a big fan of the lion. That doesn't mean that I'm only about the lion in this talk. I've found ways to try and train myself to think in terms of other clans, and like even the ones I don't like the mantis. But the ones we should know the setting. So anyway. What? The mantis? We'll talk. So, some reminders. Right. We have Rokugan. Rokugan is not historical Japan. Just looking at the map of Rokugan, you'll notice that Rokugan is a weird analogy of Japan plus China plus Thailand plus Korea plus a little bit of Vietnam and maybe a little bit of the Philippines somewhere along the Mantis Islands. So it's actually huge. And while the predominant culture for this is mostly based in Japanese, it's also important to remember that it was written by the West. So there's a lot of story tropes, there's a lot of beats that they use that are very Arthurian even. But they just palette swapped it, they put them in samurai armor and then go kill the bad guy.
Reskins.
Yes, reskins are good, as we heard from the previous talk. L5R is not samurai D&D.
Yes.
Just because it's just because you put a sword, a katana on it, doesn't make it L5R. That's very important to know, and that's something that we'll talk about in further detail. So again, a unique setting. When we're talking about L5R, we're talking about a world where honor is a force more powerful than steel. This is something we took from the back cover of the book, and this is something that's present across all 4 editions. So there's one thing that you should remember. This is a game where someone who says the right thing to the right person can cause you to commit suicide. And you can't really get away from that. So, you may be the strongest fighter in the world, but soon you'll be writing a death poem and carving your guts out because someone told you to. and that's something you can't really avoid in L5R. So again, in terms of unique setting, again, social standing matters in this game. Your glory, your honor, your status. There are 3 stats just to tell you where you are in social standing. If that isn't a clue as to how important socials are, then second, no looting at dead bodies. Again, since we're taking cues from Asian philosophies, this isn't the whole, okay, we've slaughtered all the bandits, let's start picking up their money and their gear to sell. 2 things. Number 1, touching dead bodies is considered very, very unclean. Number 2, peasant equipment is really substandard compared to most of what samurais would do. Commerce is a no-no. If you are a samurai, you really shouldn't be counting coins and haggling over fish in the market. It's beneath you. That's something that you have people do.
Smart.
And then, well, anyway, we'll get back to that. Last point, in the previous slide, no need to hoard gold and treasure. Again, the consideration here is that you are playing nobles. Every single one of the characters, except for the one playing Ronin, are generally nobles. So this means that you come from a noble house, you have a lord that provides for everything you need, your board and lodging, your food, a stipend that you can spend on whatever you want, as long as it's either honorable or something that they can quietly ignore, then great. But the point is, hoarding gold and treasure is not a good thing because it makes you appear to be greedy and base and pretty much unbecoming of a samurai. Right. So we'll go to central conflict. Central conflict of socials and L5R is a three-way conflict between duty, which is your social obligation. The next one is honor, which is your spiritual obligation. And then finally, you have love, which is your emotional obligation. I'd like to linger a little bit on this slide. And essentially, central conflict for L5R is best taken when you mix all of these together and then you smash them against each other. Because if you'll notice, these are all very stringent standards that all samurai are held against. And ideally, you're supposed to be the paragon of all 3. That never works in the real world. As they say, there was a saying in I forgot which samurai said it, but basically, duty is as heavy as a mountain, but death is as light as a feather. Basically, it means that doing your job is the hardest thing you will ever do, dying is easier. And because duty is the harder thing to do, that's why you're samurai. Right. So just to go over these 3 really quick. Duty is your social obligation. These are the things that they wrote down in your resume. These are the things you're supposed to do for your lord. Honor is spiritual obligation. This is technically your morality in an Asian context. So again, your duty is to protect your lord, but he's an utter bastard that kills children. Your honor dictates something differently. Immediately you have conflict. Finally, love. This is your emotional obligation. This is who you are as a person. It might not be honorable, but I love this person. I love this person enough that I would break bonds of duty and honor just to get to that person. So again, it's a matter of priorities. And as a GM, if you're running a social game, it doesn't have to be L5R per se, but it's important to keep note of these 3 because if you want to create like drama and conflict that will linger with regards to your players, find ways to smash these things together. Because eventually, once you start questioning them, okay, which is more important? Your son or your duty to your emperor? Your son did something, do you cover up for him? Or your wife was involved in this conspiracy. Do you execute her in front of the emperor to save your skin? Or to save the honor of your people? Or something else? Or does your duty and honor take place and I'm sorry, I loved you, but there is no recourse. For me, this is the only way. So again, this is where your social conflict comes in. Just smash these 3 together. If there's one thing you take from this entire talk, consider these 3, and make sure that they hate each other, and you'll have a lot of interesting times with your characters. Okay. Next up, Bushido. For L5R, it's important that we run through Bushido. This and the next few slides will actually be very L5R concentric, L5R centered. And you basically have the 7 virtues of Bushido. Just to go over them very quickly, compassion here is not the Western form of compassion. Compassion here is your is basically how good you are to people, but at the same time, it doesn't necessarily mean you are merciful. It's slightly tricky. I'll get to that in a bit. Courage here is also means your willingness to get into a fight. Courtesy here is also is technically your manners, as well as your how civilized you are. Duty and loyalty, that's very straightforward. Honesty and justice, honor and sincerity. Again, there's a difference between honor and sincerity. Sincerity is more of appearing to be honest. So, how well you can pass saying that, oh, I'm telling the truth. Or how well you can manipulate your words in such a way that you convey yourself as being proper and all that without screwing up and getting yourself killed. Okay, so in terms of Bushido, I want to go through the quick first 6-7 clans of L5R first. I will apologize for fans of those clans which came in later on, but we'll stick to the basics for now. So, moving quickly, we have the Crab clan. Woo! Yay! So, we have a Crab clan, guys. So, okay, Crab, duty and courage. Their job was to protect the wall. That's all they do.
Yes.
They don't care about courtesy. They don't care about the tea ceremony, does the person bow properly.
Yes.
You don't really care about that stuff when you're fighting for your life every day. So that's important for them. So this is where you can draw your conflict when you start smashing duty against courtesy. You put him in the winter court, you put him in a situation where and all of a sudden like, what do I do?
Yes.
You know, every little thing I do seems to offend someone else. So that's where you draw your
Crab
sword.
smash!
Exactly. So you have a whole bunch of crab smash moments. Right. So next up we have, in alphabetical order, no favoritism, the crane. These guys are all about the courtesy and all about honor. They're not so much about getting into fights. So if we can basically talk about this and just forget this ever happened, or I understand you've been insulted, but maybe a little something will make this go away, then we're talking about the crane. They're diplomats, they're everything. They like courtesy, they like manners, they like civilization, they like honor, but getting into fights is not their thing. So if you start bumping them against the crab, then you get interesting conflict. Next up, we have the dragon. The dragon are all about justice and sincerity. They're kind of the weirdest clan of all of them because it's very vague. When they were created, the setting basically says the dragon clan were tasked to watch over the empire and not do anything. And for the rest of the first story arc, that's exactly what they did. Even to the point that in the final battle against the big bad evil god thing, Fu Leng, their thunder grabbed a scroll and watched. Essentially, that's what she did. I'm sorry, but that's what she did. Are they dragon clan? No. Okay, just checking. I want to know if I have to look out for myself and my wife and son if I step out of this room. They are cool monks.
And you repeat, that's all they did.
And that's all they did. I have other things later on. But anyway,
If you step out, you'll just see someone watching you.
yeah. Dragon, I heard what you said. So
Show me your stance.
They're not so big on duty and courtesy. They're not so big on that whole, duty to the empire. No, that's you guys. We're just here.
So, chaotic good, basically. Chaotic good.
It's a personal thing. This is where your sense of personal honor comes in. Do you dabble? Because your clan certainly doesn't enforce it. So that's one thing to consider. And then courtesy, again, they have monks that basically just run over the usual standards of politics. I walk in and insult the Lord. Hey, I'm a monk.
Yes.
Not like you can screw with me. So again, the manners are not so big on the dragon, and they're sometimes important because I don't know if you guys are familiar with the Zen koan practice, but basically it's snapping someone out of their standard way of thinking so that they achieve enlightenment. And the rudeness associated with the dragon tends to mirror that. So they come in, they break up the court by doing something crazy, and then why? Because I have something that I need you guys to consider or I need to prove.
Oh my god, they're the crazy old men. Yes.
Yes! Tattoos! Anyway, moving on. After dragon, we have the lion. Hey!
Lion.
Not the handsomest guy like chosen for this one, but basically, these guys are all about courage and honor. They're not so keen on like the proper, if they get insulted, it's good enough that you and me fight downstairs rather than let's talk about this. And compassion is not so big on them. If somebody surrenders, I can take his head and then bring it home as a trophy. Great. But they do not budge on courage and honor. I know that stepping down to to a fight with this guy will mean I die. But I do it anyway. Because that's what's expected of me and then what's expected of my clan. So again, conflict. So it's one of those, okay, so you're a lion down there, right? Okay. Here. You're put in a situation where you have to fight somebody that you're hopelessly outclassed against. What do you do? So again, internal conflict. Player suddenly, crap, I don't want to die, but this is what's expected of my player character. So 2 ways to do it. He decides to back out. Oh, congratulations, you're dishonored. Here's an option. You want to become a Death Seeker. Or, here's another option. The Scorpion guy is willing to make it all disappear. But now you don't want to do that. Again, next up we have the Phoenix. Phoenix people?
Yay.
Wow, okay, Phoenix people in the house. Phoenix people are all about sincerity and compassion. They're not so much about getting into fights. They're the pacifists of the group. They're all about knowledge. They constantly get into trouble reading things they shouldn't be reading.
Yes.
Very true. But in general, they're, aside from having a banned reading list, these guys are alright. So in terms of them, their sort of conflict is a little less social, but it's all about that. Hey, I have this illegal book. Do you want it?
White promise.
Because I can give it to you if you do this for me. That's all about that. But again, it breaks down depending on the families. But for now, very surface level. Moving on, Scorpion.
Yeah.
Alright, so how many Scorpion fans are in here?
Yeah.
We only have 2. We have 2 openly.
Therefore, we are not the ones to watch.
Yes. Well, that depends. It could be a double thing. Anyway, so Scorpion are all about loyalty. More than duty, it's all about loyalty. Courtesy, they stick to if only because it keeps them alive. They're ambivalent about everything else. Honor, honesty, justice. Those are nice words, but not really something the Scorpion adheres. Occasionally, you may have one Scorpion at a time that has can't lie.
That's my kind of
The funny thing is, when you do run an L5R game and somebody plays Scorpion, it's almost inevitable they will pick can't lie. I don't know why. Trust me, I've run 5 games. 4 of them can't lie. It's a Scorpion thing. I don't know why they do it. But anyway, so again, the Scorpion clan on their end, this is what you get. Loyalty. So they can give up everything else except their loyalty to the clan or loyalty to a certain person in the clan. Maybe they're daimyo, maybe they're champion, maybe something. But that's the one you hit. Because for Scorpions, it's easy for them to throw everything else away. So, but Scorpions make great antagonists because you can pretty much put them up against any other clan, and then it instantly builds conflict. You can basically say that, oh, you're here eating in this ramen shop, and this Scorpion guy steps in, the players are like, ah. Really? Okay.
Already?
Can I eat my ramen in peace? So that's the basic clans. Again, I will apologize to Mantis and Spider fans everywhere. Actually, no, I don't. Moving on. Unicorn. Yes,
yes.
that's right. I forgot about these guys. Anyway,
Moving on.
Unicorn are technically the paragons of compassion. They don't look like that now, especially after they absorbed the not Mongols. And ever since their champions started becoming big burly men, they don't actually look like compassion guys, but they actually are.
They're best warriors.
Yeah, I mean they're very, very purpose at the very start of the game when they were introduced. It's like, hey, we're the guys which don't know Rokugani culture that well, but we like people. Hello, peasant person. Why are you being abused? What's happening? I will help you. That was what they were at the start, and then they absorbed the non-Mongols and they became very warlike. But they're still technically the compassion guys. We'll get to that later. Yeah. So why go social? Right. Moving on. Why go social? Social conflict offers a different way of challenging players. Because let's be fair. After like the 4th or 5th combat in a row in a single session, things start to get boring.
Yes.
After a while, it's like, oh my god, what do you like? What do you like? What don't you like? Which one of the 3 things do you actually adhere to? Because these are the situations that will throw you at, and it's what makes L5R very different from D&D and from other action fantasy type games. Next up, we have social forces players to consider their actions more carefully. Let's be fair. I understand that in tactical games, a lot of players will consider their actions very carefully, especially if it's up against a monster. But social is interesting because it has the effect of what you say in what situation to what person echoes. So now all of a sudden, I was in a discussion with a friend, which I will not name, and the idea here was that he was juggling 3 different relationships. So all of a sudden,
That's not me.
every move he makes is carefully considered. He can do one thing, but it echoes. And he has to be very careful because apparently the 3 know each other and are all in the same office. But
Shit. Skill expertise.
I will not say what that is, but again, every step that person takes is very carefully considered. Right. Moving on. Ruined reputations are harder to repair. You can go to a temple, have somebody heal you. You can go to a temple, have somebody resurrect you in D&D. But if your reputation is ruined in L5R, then it's a long, hard road crawling your way back up to the top. And sometimes that makes for a great story. Eventually when you're a player in an L5R game, sometimes dishonor is not a bad thing. It sucks, yes, but at the same time, it's an opportunity for you to run through a different kind of story arc. I played in a game once where I was a Phoenix Clan bodyguard for another player character, and when it turns out that there was some sort of whatever conspiracy happening within the clan, I decided to go Ronin. So from that point forward, my character became Liam Neeson. Because he had no honor to stop him at that point. So the only thing he had guiding him already was love, because his charge was the daughter of his best friend to the woman that he once loved. Anyway, long story. So in short, this is my daughter that could have been. I will risk all my honor to make sure she's alive. And he basically becomes Liam Neeson for Taken. Anyway, we'll get to that later. It's a fun story. I can talk about that after the talk. So examples of social conflict are negotiation, interrogation, it's a long list, haggling, pitching, performances, motivational speaking, conspiracy, disinformation, and seduction, courtship. These are all very important things to consider. Social conflict comes in all flavors. Negotiation here can be anything as basic from trade to let the hostage go. Interrogation, it's actually not as easy as you think. I would like to go back to a game of Numenera I ran here. And essentially one player decided to, upon coming back to the person that hired them, haggle upwards in terms of his reward by pointing a crossbow to the guy's face. That is not negotiation.
No.
It's an entirely different thing. So also interrogation, important thing to remember here, and very fun stat. Chances of you actually retrieving what do you call this, accurate information from an interrogation is nil. It's very difficult. So the next time your Crab Clan samurai gets a little too Tetsubo happy on the prisoner of war, consider what your GM might tell you. It might not necessarily be the truth, or the guy might be a spiteful bastard and give you all the wrong information to make you screw up and either get killed or be ruined forever. Haggling, this is something that can happen. Some players like it, some players don't. Pitching, pitch an idea to your team, preferably in character, pitch an idea to your lord. Motivational speeches and performances, this is very, very important. I'd like to stop for a moment and slow down here because in L5R, performances are very important. If you notice in L5R, there's the artisan skill is enormous. It has everything from ikebana, just flower arranging, to calligraphy, to poetry, to artfully insulting everybody else in court, in satane, to all sorts of other things. But basically, performances are important because in Rokugan, telling someone something directly is insulting. If you go ahead and tell a guy, you are a dick, then...
Swords and dogs.
Yeah, swords and dogs. Swords... Buti ka mabagpas na doon. But the point is basically, certain kinds of brutal honesty are a bad thing. Because it will look badly for you as well. So in terms of this, performances are great because it's a great way. All right, I guess one way to put it is that L5R is a game of passive aggression. If you really want to consider it that way, performances. All right, here's an example. You have a higher-ranking lord of greater status who is responsible for the murder of someone, and you want to prove this. How do you go about it? You can accuse him in front of a higher-ranking lord, but if you don't have the testimony of someone who has higher status, no dice. You can't pursue it. So what do you do? In this case, what players did was they put together a screenplay and a performance. So they staged a theater play in public along with that lord and several other people, telling a story that's remarkably similar to the events as they were able to piece together. And when they did so, the performance roll for this one is extremely high, but the lord was basically suffered like this massive bout of guilt and depression so much that he publicly confessed to the crime and requested to commit honorable suicide. Hamlet. So yeah, it's very Hamlet in that sense. So never discount the worth of art skills in L5R. Conspiracy, this happens all the time in L5R, especially among the Scorpion and the Phoenix. They're twins for a reason. So, this information is a great thing to use. I've had a play group of L5R that has been playing together for years. And these guys are so used to this so that they can actually play in 2 levels. Like, oh, we're clanmates. You don't need to know this information. So they start cherry picking information, what they share to each other, so that I know what he knows, so that he can act in a way that I want to. So hopefully he doesn't see what I know, so I can move my agenda forward. And yet they're all one clan. So it gets tricky. After a while, we're like, who knows what now? But again, that requires your players to be very aware of, separating character knowledge from player knowledge. But we can get to that later on. Seduction and courtship. L5R, samurai, as everybody else, are still people. They still have emotions. You have the classic tragic story of the samurai, falls in love with a geisha, and blah blah blah. Or you can have something else. But seduction and courtship is, again, very valuable. If your GM is amenable to running games which has elements like these, or isn't the type of GM that's too controlling about letting go of control of NPCs, then this is a great way to go. Especially for for Crane and Scorpion characters. This is about the only way to go for it. They're very good at it. Okay, introducing social conflict. Sorry, let me double check time. Okay. Let your players find their legs first. I know that it will be fun to throw them in like Game of Thrones, right in the middle of things, but let them find their way. L5R is a tricky setting, and they need to find their legs. So things don't throw them off the deep end of the pool. Don't start the game, oh, it's the winter court. Like, no one wants to be in the winter court the first game.
Yes.
No one, ever. Let them explore their boundaries. Oh, they made a mistake. That's fine. Have someone clean up for them, and then make them owe the guy. So, or just make it in one of those situations where they can explore the boundaries safely. And again, go easy on the consequences for now. But this is very important for L5R and also for other games. If you plan to start going social for your other games, let them make mistakes first. Let them walk before they run. Don't execute them right away because they said something wrong. Because how would they know? So they need to learn these things first. Then you start scaling up. So you start adding multiple parties. The fun thing about politics is once you have multiple parties with multiple interests, and offer multiple rewards for conflicting parties. So this guy will give you this if you do this. This guy will not do this to you if you this. So picking a side is burning a bridge. Okay, why is this so important? Again, it goes back to the very idea of choice and the definition of choice, which is basically when you pick something, it has to mean something. So when you choose, it will have consequences, and make those consequences meaningful and lasting. You don't want them to think, oh, that's, I can apparently, it's all wishy-washy. Oh, I do this and nothing happens pala. Okay lang pala. But in this case, all of a sudden, I have to consider all the choices I make because I know that I can't rewind time and just redo things. Sometimes doing the right thing means you'll hurt a lot of people along the way. You might not necessarily like it, but it's the right thing for you. Do you still push through? So again, these are the moments where you start instilling internal conflict inside the player character. because all of a sudden the player has to consider, okay, what would my character do? In some ways, that's one of the beauty of L5R. It really forces you to inhabit your character's mindset and start considering the dilemma that they're in, to the point that, okay, I'm probably going to end up having to commit suicide if I do this, but it's the right thing to do. So, yeah, all of a sudden. Right, moving on. Playing the NPC. For GMs, these are important things to remember. When you're playing an NPC, what is your motivation? Remember that everyone has a goal. One thing to help is that whenever the player characters engage with the NPC, make sure that the NPC wants something. Don't make it random chit-chat. Oh, the weather's nice today. Blah, blah, blah. It just eats up time. But if the NPC is with you and they go, oh, the weather's nice today. Yes. Did you hear what this guy said? I don't think it's actually a good idea. Maybe there's something we can do about it. Let's talk over here. Then you push the plot forward. And every NPC has a motivation. So when your players start initiating something, oh, I want to talk to this guy, then at least in your notes and in your head, you know that the NPC is after something else. Now, if it turns out that they're aligned, then great. You know, they hop skip together to the house. But if not, then that's when you start playing. Okay, I'll do this for you if you do this for me. Then it turns into a negotiation. Then, you know, social conflict or social combat, if you want to put it that way, happens. Next is, what is your weakness? Remember that NPCs are valuable as well. So everyone has a price. Sometimes, you know, you have this powerful NPC combatant, whatever, but ultimately, he has a soft spot for geisha. This is easier for Scorpion Clan players to figure out because they actually have techniques to dig up the dirt. But, what do you call this? A little bit of background research goes a long way with regards to your NPCs. Again, GMs can be guilty of playing dirty in this regard. I know from experience that there are some GMs which don't like their NPCs being out with it. So they tend to move the goalpost. So, oh, technically this is his weakness, but oh no, the players know it. It'll be too easy. I'll move it over, I'll change it to something else, or I'll ignore it. But part of, you know, what you should look for when you're actually looking for a GM to run this is someone that's honest about his NPCs and is willing to play the NPCs as they're supposed to be, because otherwise then, you know, they'll just be cheating. And then lastly, where do you draw the line? What's the one thing that you won't do as an NPC? Even murderers hate rapists. Unless you're a murder rapist. Well, basically, there are things that NPCs won't budge on. So sometimes it might not be the right approach to talk to this guy to do something for you. Yes, he has a weakness for geisha, but no, he will never betray his lord no matter what you do. So no matter how many geisha you throw at him, that's not going to work. In fact, if you throw enough geisha at him, you will probably tell the lord and you will be in trouble. So again, these are things that are important for GM to run his NPCs properly. The NPCs have to be detailed in this manner, in your mind, so that when your players engage, the NPCs can react accordingly. So it's just like combat, except in this case, these are your stats. These are the weaknesses, these are the resistances, these are that's how you should think about it. Alright, so setting the scene, elements to consider would be time, place, comfort and or activity, audience. Sorry, can you go back? There. Just to go through these. Time and place, again, very important. When and where you engage someone for social conflict is important. Are they comfortable? What activity is happening right now? Is this some sort of tournament? Is this guy, you know, relaxed in this environment, or is he pressured? If you're going to try and, you know, use very strong negotiation tactics on someone, is it better if you do that when he's in front of someone that he's, what do you call this, accountable to? If you're trying to get someone to do something for you in front of someone that he loves, for example, is that an opportunity for you to push? If in combat situations, we tend to look at terrain, we take a look at advantages given by the environment. This is your environment. Geishas that you have, the advantage, the flanking bonuses that you get, they get that too. But in social situations, that means that they'll take advantage of all the things that they can. Otherwise, they wouldn't be a fair opponent. So as long as you trust your GM to conduct their NPCs appropriately, then you should be fine. each conversation is an opportunity to draw out information regarding the player characters or your NPC. Again, this is one of those things where where as a GM you have to be careful, because as a GM you're omnipotent and omniscient. You have all the information about your player characters. For example, if I'm running for a character that I know has this weakness, as a GM I should know it, but the NPC doesn't. Instead, use that opportunity for the NPC to draw out that information. Have the NPC try different things, engage in different locations. Hey, it turns out that this guy has difficulty turning down a good drink. Add that down to the NPC's list of what the NPC knows, so that it's fair. So that the NPC doesn't magically show up and like, oh, I know all your weaknesses and start putting in the worst thing and pressure you right away. That feels very artificial and unfair to your players. Instead, look for those moments when you're running and your player says something and then realizes he just gave up one of his vulnerabilities. You know you're right once your player's like, oh shit, did I just say that? Like, yes you did. Note that down. And that's actually what I go for when I run. I've had situations where I have one player character who really is very careful about what information he gives out, so that when he actually paints himself into a corner, he spends the rest of the session with his head down on the desk because he realizes that he's screwed. But only to that NPC, so he starts repairing his reputation with that NPC, or at least finds a way to blackmail him so that he has leverage again. Okay, so how do you win? Right, winning conditions here are that the target agrees to your demands, the target has no significant influence or reputation, the target is unable to pursue his initial course of action, or the target owes you a favor. So these are technically the four things that you really should be going for. Unlike combat where you win when the other guy is lying in a pool of his own blood, social combat is not a clean situation. So sometimes like, oh, the conversation ends. Who won? Or the scene ends. Who won? What happens? You look at this. So your NPCs should actually be going for one of these as well. I mean, not all NPCs. You know, the guys, a henchman that you bought for D&D should not always be going for these things. But when you do engage in someone in a social perspective, then they might be going for one of this. Do I get the player character to do something for me? Has the player character lost enough influence to be useless in court? Is the guy no longer able to pursue his initial course of action? Oh, I want this guy hung for block that avenue. It's like, okay, so what does he do? Does he have to resort to dishonorable means? What if the guy is not the type to be dishonorable? Then, wala. Sorry ka na lang. Find a different way around it. Or, this is my favorite. The target owes you a favor. Favor trading is very, 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 very fun in LFR. If you know what you're doing, and if your players know what they're doing, then you will owe each other a lot. But again, sometimes this is the kind of currency that you need for socials. Because all of a sudden, it's like mind control, except on demand. You draw on that favor, okay, you owe me already, do this for me, and then we'll just forget about it. Quits na tayo. So all of a sudden, they're obligated to do that, even if it means going up against most of their so-called values. Okay, so at this point, let's open up the floor to the discussion. I don't know if I've overshot my time for this, but are there any questions with regards to socials from both L5R or non-L5R games? Questions? Any situations in your games that you're looking at and how to spice them up or spruce them up by adding further conflict? How many of you guys have tried running a purely political L5R game?
Not L5R.
Okay.
Vampire the Masquerade.
Right.
One of the most socially...
Toby.
I remember a lot of us were veteran players of White Wolf, World of Darkness games. We had one player, he's new. He's from Zion, but he's new with Vampire the Masquerade. So he's used to combat-oriented characters. He picks, I think, a Bruja or a Gangrel. Right. And the situation was Manila just lost its prince, and all of the clans were there in Quezon City Circle for a meeting on how to go about picking the new prince. Okay. He goes to the bar and sees a female vampire, and starts seducing it. So our storyteller, are you doing this as a skill roll? Yeah, he doesn't know, and we're like, oh no, that's a Tremere. I know that's not a Tremere. That's a Toreador. Okay. So he makes a seduction roll, to try to get info from the vampire at the bar, and it's a good roll. my GM rolls more than 5 successes, and now you're that thing about consequences.
Right,
you know,
right.
like especially for the guys who are just used to fighters in a social game. Like in that case, he was like charmed for 100 years. He was like a pet.
Long time.
Yeah, 7 successes. The book says 5, 10 years. So we started calculating. Oh, you're basically forever the pet of this Toreador. So
Okay.
so just it brings home that
Okay.
concept, and social combat you lose. It's actually much bigger.
Yes, it does have much more
Yeah, because-
consequences than you think.
And like the consequences for his character, that the war reached to a point like when there's this elder that grows up. Later on, this part 2 of our entire campaign.
Right.
And his clan, the Gruja, it sided with the elder. But the new prince was a Toreador, and that vampire that had him enthralled was the second in command of the Toreador, and he had no choice. He was in Sorcerer, so he had to side
Mm.
with this girl, and really that screwed up his entire.
Well, hopefully, number one, hopefully he knew that he was getting into a political game to begin with.
We warned him.
Okay, well that's great. Sometimes that's really one of the things, because you do have the tendency of people which have very different expectations when they come into a campaign, and then your story could have turned out very, very badly if he was the type to be like, oh, but this isn't what I like for my character. Because I've run into that. L5R games, like I'm sorry, you pretty much done everything you could to insult the guy, and you're just going to have to commit suicide now. I think, no, I'm not. Actually, yes, in this game you do. I'm sorry. You have to build a new character, or find a way to worm yourself out of this, but you're not getting out unscathed. Again, it's very important to set the expectation before you run a social game. This is a social game. Be careful of what you do and what you say, because they will have effects. I guess that's one thing that becomes important. I guess one topic that we could talk about here is how do you add socials to a non-social game? You have D&D, you have other, Numenera technically is not a social game. But again, pay attention to the settings. D&D has the advantage of being around a long time, but the settings actually have a lot of things going for them. It's just it just has to be a matter of knowing where to look and the GM supporting it. D&D often has rules for sensing motives or determining what an NPC's disposition is, and you need to be able to be transparent about that information to the players that should have it. So if you have a cleric with high wisdom, then put him as your social character. Hey, you have high wisdom, you know that there's something wrong if you say something like this. Or you're starting to think that the guy is a little sketchy. You start building from there. And eventually you'll be able to build up politics. L5R is nice because it comes out with everything in a box. The politics, the structures, everything is all already there. But for other games, you have to build up slowly. So you have to introduce the system. Who are you talking to? Why is it important? And all of that. Right. So other games have a similar setup. World of Darkness in general. Vampire the Masquerade is infamous for having a good potential for politics. In the new World of Darkness, surprisingly, I found Mage, the Awakening, to be very, very good in terms of politics, because I don't know if you guys are familiar with the politics of academics, but it's very much like that. Tenure is everything. No, seriously, tenure is everything. So think of it, if you compare the social structure and the politics of Mage to that of academics and or hospitals. Seriously, if you guys know any doctors and talk about tenure and all of that, you start to draw all the right lines between them, and you realize just how dirty the politics can get. Other games, most old games had this. Fading Suns. I don't know if you guys have heard of this, but Fading Suns is a fantastic setting that has all sorts of political angles. You have noble houses in space. So it's kind of like Doom plus L5R plus Star Wars in space. So you have a lot of potential for politics there as well. do any of the other gyms here have any suggestions for games for people that might be? Yeah.
Well, I've been doing a lot of reading regarding political stuff, or I think games.
Right.
And 3 games come up actually.
Okay.
One is Shadowrun. Shadowrun from every level, from your what do you call this? You're talking with your G-man, the G-man, the guy who's supposed to give you your missions. If you don't have any face in the party, or if you don't know how to speak with the guy, there's a 90 or almost a certain chance that he will screw you up one way or another. And then there's even the corporations and the governments that are in league with the corporations. All levels of it is politics. Even though there are no direct mechanics on it, the setting and the playstyle has to consider it.
Right. Actually, good point. Considering the Shadowrun's assumption is that you are people divorced from society, and yet you get screwed over by the man every time. So great. Well, you mentioned you knew 3 games, so you have 2 others?
2 is, and the second one is Ars Magica.
Okay.
Ars Magica, it's for those who are unfamiliar with it, it's basically medieval D&D in a European setting with the Catholic Church meddling in your affairs.
Okay.
So
church.
Yes. You have to make sure.
Not church.
In addition to the church, you have to have your paranormal settings, like you have the fairies, the demons, and all. And all of these groups are meddling with your affairs. I mean, you're just let's say, depending on the setting that of the GM or the group, since there's an option to go GM-less, you can start off with, let's say, Spring Court, where everybody's newbies and you're starting from scratch. No, not much politics there. Your politics are basically between the mages and the companions and the grogs, who are basically cannon fodder. If you start in the Winter Court, however, you have NPCs that are high-level mages, and you have to meddle. They're messing with you, and they're messing with each other. So, and you have, as a new guy in the Winter Court, you basically have to consider your politics there. Otherwise, you get booted out, and that's the best thing that will happen to you.
Yes.
Let me just say that in RPGs in general, anything with winter on it sounds sketchy.
Winter is right. Winter tends to be pretty bad.
Yes.
Winter tends to be pretty bad.
Okay.
Di ba Winter Court ang first game natin?
No, it's not. Shit. It's actually not. I was very careful to not set it with Winter Court because that's where all the really big movers and shakers are. So yeah, sorry.
Do you have a preferred era of play?
Preferred, okay. For those familiar with L5R, preferred era of play for me would be several. One would be just before the Clan Wars. Default setting of the first edition. It could be nostalgia docking, but in my head, it's because number one, you have less factions to consider. The Scorpion Clan aren't even there, or if they are, it was because the Fu. There was no Fuleng to mess things up. Because, alright, L5R is a great political setting, but if you follow the card game, it is horrendous because there's always that one big bad that everybody aligns to kill. And that just ruins all the politics of everything. No, suddenly they're like, let's all hold hands and combine our powers to summon something. So like, it's a rainbow of samurai. Actually,
Different colors for
it's like Skittles versus something. It's bad. And it works for the card game. It doesn't work for the RPG. So I always look for those times of peace, quote unquote. So another one would be like after the Four Winds era, you have Hantei Naseru on the throne. And it's essentially a soft reboot. I don't know if you guys noticed this, but when Hantei Naseru took over, hey, it's a Hantei again on the Emperor. And if you looked at all the champions, all of them are paragons of their respective clans. You have the cleanest, nicest, most badass Crane champion ever. You have the most macho Lion Clan guy who does not have, and I will, apologize for the term to the women in the room, but PMS problems as the champion. Because prior to this, you had Tsuko, who was just angry all the time. Everyone. For no reason. It's like, I hate this guy. I hate. Relax. But no. Anyway, so you had all these champions that represented the best of their clans, and it was a time of peace. No one was after everyone else, and so all of a sudden the GM has room to breathe. The reason I don't like running clan war games is because everyone is killing everyone else off. I can run it as a single clan game where everybody is part of this clan and then follow that. This is the only way to play it because otherwise the fiction doesn't work. If you have a group of people put together and it's the clan wars, it's like, oh, we're here and our clans are murdering each other, so what do we do now? Your champion pretty much killed my champion and now my clan is suffering from an evil plague of zombies. Bati pa rin ba tayo?